Hey everybody, I have some exciting news to share with you. Here at Rock Harbor, we are going to be hosting a prophecy conference on October 4th. It's a Saturday, and it's going to be right here in Bakersfield at Rock Harbor Church. And we're going to have a prophecy conference about the apostasy of the church. But we're not only going to talk about what's going on in a negative way in the church and how the church is losing its grip with the culture and not contending for the faith. We're going to talk about ways in which we as individual Christians can re-engage in the fight and battle through what's happening not only in the West but around the world. And so we're going to have a great cast of speakers and some top-notch guys that I have lined up, and they're going to have a one-day shot of not only exposing what's going on, but equipping us in, okay, what can I do to be salt and light? How can I go about confronting this that I see in my churches, that I see in my community, that the church is not doing and the pastors are not doing? We are having a leadership deficit. And so we hope from this conference to encourage many people at the grassroots level to take ownership and say, hey, look, will you be able to take out the truth and contend for the faith, be salt and light, because the churches are not doing it anymore. The pastors are not doing it anymore. So it comes down to our responsibility. And so that's what we're geared up for, and it's going to be great. You're going to be blessed, and you're going to walk away fully equipped to be able to handle this culture. And so hopefully mark down your calendars that hopefully you can attend in person, but if not, we'll have a live stream for your event, for anyone that can't make it, and it will, either way, it'll be a blessing for you. So mark the date, October 4th. It's a Saturday here in Bakersfield, California at Rock Harbor Church. Hope to see you then. Let's jump back into our study in Matthew, and we're going to be going through now the Sermon on the Mount, and we're going to take it piece by piece because it's long. It's very long, and so I have to take this in bite-sized chunks. And the first aspect of the Sermon on the Mount are the Beatitudes. Now, you've heard the Beatitudes many, many times, but probably have never heard the full intent of the Beatitudes and what it's meant for. Unfortunately, I will say this. When you do not know the Jewish background, you don't understand a lot of what's Matthew's trying to drive at, people will misinterpret the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is not about how to obtain salvation through works. It's not telling you that. It actually should tell you the opposite, that you cannot do this because Messiah has to do it. And so there's a lot of misinterpretations of, the Sermon on the Mount. Now, the Beatitudes are a little bit different. It starts off blessed, and everything is blessed. Blessed is probably not the best word to translate this. It's happy, but it's a happiness that is a result of doing what God says. Now, what you're going to see with the Beatitudes is there is a reward for cultivating these virtues. And the reward for cultivating these virtues is not only a present blessing, but has a future reward aspect. And that's why typically the Beatitudes are not taught correctly, because you have to see them as rewards in the future. And so we're going to go through that from a Jewish perspective. We'll try to unpack that, see how many I can get through today, but we'll see. But anyway, one of the things about the Beatitudes is you got to know the audience, and you got to know who Jesus was speaking to. The audience is his disciples. That's what it says that he is speaking to. Now, there's other people listening to him, but this is him speaking to the disciples, which means contextually he is speaking to believers, not unbelievers. Okay, so that right there sets the context that this is not passages of how to be saved, which would make it a works-based salvation, which all the cults do this to. It is speaking to believers about cultivating how to live and cultivate these virtues so they can inherit the full rewards of the Messianic Kingdom. See, Jesus is presenting the Messianic Kingdom. He is offering it. He's given a bona fide offer, and he is saying, if you do these things, this is what it will be like in the kingdom for you. So it's about rewards and inheritance, and that's what he's trying to drive at. And again, the goal is the reward of this, the reward of the Messianic Kingdom. And so again, like I said, happiness will occur if you cultivate these virtues. And happiness not just here, but happiness into eternity is what he's trying to do. Now, the Beatitudes are in twofold. They're those that relate to God and those that relate to human beings. It's just like the 10 Commandments. The first 4 relate to God. 5 through 10 relate to humans. So you have the vertical and the horizontal. And so let's go through now the Beatitudes. Let's make application for all of us and look at the society, how this plays out in our world. The first one is, it says this, then he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, the concept of poor in spirit, do not think this means poverty poor or economics, as the social gospel teaches. Okay, there's a bunch of churches that teach that you're blessed to be poor. Well, and the opposite is true, not true either, that blessed are you who are rich. That's not true either. So you don't want to make the mistake of the health and wealth prosperity gospel, but you do not want to make the mistake as the Catholic monks do of saying that this is the poor of poverty stricken. That's not what this means. It's poor, and the qualification is what? In spirit. Okay, so what this is referring to, a poor in spirit, is that the believer understands their spiritual bankruptcy, understands their spiritual poverty, and acts from a foundation from this. So as a believer, we know we're spiritually poor in the fact that we came to faith in the Messiah. We couldn't save ourselves, and so we had to trust in the Messiah. Okay, so now in our sanctification, the same is true. You and I cannot change on our own. You and I can't do the things and serve on our own. We have to be tied to the Messiah. We have to, he is divine and we are the branches concept, okay? So there's nothing we can do without him. But how you function is that mindset is, I am destitute still, even as a believer, and able to do anything without his enablement. It's the idea there. And so this spiritual poverty, then the reward, if you understand this, then yours is the kingdom. And yours is the kingdom doesn't mean entrance into the kingdom. You get entrance into the kingdom by believing in Jesus. That's your entrance. But possessing the kingdom, as he says, yours is the kingdom. Possessing it is about reward, that you will be rewarded because of that. Now, he doesn't explain all the reward, but he just says, I'm going to tack on a reward if you have this mentality throughout your entire life, which totally makes sense. If I have this attitude and mentality that I'm destitute spiritually and I need Jesus for everything, it sets in motion everything I do. I do not become prideful. I do not become arrogant because I know who I am. And it's a picture of us as a beggar with God in our relationship with him. And we have to depend on him for our survival is the idea. So really what it comes down to is a proper evaluation of ourselves. We're broken. We're sinful. We're incomplete. We're weak. We're wounded. We're immature. We can't fix ourselves. That's the idea, right? And so once you get this foundation in you and you work from that foundation, it gets rid of a lot of problems. And it's amazing. That's why he starts out with it as number one. You have to get this right about you. You are not the greatest thing, and I am not the greatest thing since sliced bread. Okay? So it's talking about perfection, but none of us have that. So if you start with this basis of understanding that I am desperate for God, it gets rid of self-righteousness. It gets rid of narcissism, lukewarmness, worldliness, carnality, misplaced priorities, compromise, and spiritual deadness. It solves a lot of the cancerous sin problems that we have. And so what ends up happening is spiritual bankruptcy, if we understand it, creates, number one, a desire to be saved. You have to be you have to come to that knowledge to be saved. But then beyond that, it creates an honesty about ourselves in light of what God says. A desire to serve him and serve his people, a desire to evangelize, a desire to obey him, a desire to be in the will of God, and a desire to grow. Here's the thing. If people don't feel like reading their Bible, or they don't feel like praying, or they don't feel like going to church and being with other believers, and they don't feel like doing any of the spiritual disciplines that is needed for us to grow, the answer is why are they not motivated to do that? Well, it comes down to spiritual poverty. The person doesn't understand what desperation they are actually in spiritually, because if they did, it would generate the motivation to get help. It's just like going to a doctor, and the doctor says you have cancer. And I can guarantee if you're told you have cancer, you're going to do everything you can to read up on it, to study it, to figure this out. You're going to change your diet. You're going to do exactly what the doctor tells you, and you're not going to miss appointments. You're going to go because your life depends on it. That's the concept of spiritual brokenness, is that I have a cancer inside of me, and I need to get this cancer out. And so it would motivate you to do exactly what the spiritual disciplines are telling you to do. You wouldn't have a problem going to church. You wouldn't have a problem praying. You wouldn't have a problem reading your Bible. When I hear people say, I just read the Bible and it bores me, or I just read the Bible and I can't understand it. And I'm like, dude, it's at a 4th grade level. What do you mean you can't understand it? And the thing about it is, what they're telling me is they're putting up a smoke screen is, oh, I know what you're saying. You lack a spiritual hunger, because if you knew your condition, you would gobble it up immediately. That's the idea. So now you can see why this is the foundation of all the Beatitudes. This is where it all starts. Now let's move to the second one. So now that the foundation is laid of a proper attitude, then he says, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. This is, Luke adds, blessed are those who weep now, for they shall laugh. So the idea here is to mourn over sin. It's not mourning over what we're going through in life. It's mourning over the things that break the heart of God. And basically what Christ is saying is you have to develop a sensitivity to sin, that you cannot get accustomed to what the culture is doing. That's what happens a lot of times as we look at the culture. We see it so much. They do a propagandize, attack on us. And before you know it, Christians are approving gay marriage. And before you know it, Christians are approving transgender surgeries. And before you know it, they're approving abortion and stuff like that. And you're like, what's happening? They have lost the ability to mourn over that which Jesus mourns over. God mourns over sin. He hates sin, and he mourns over it. And that's the virtue you and I have to develop. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. We saw Charlie Kirk get martyred and assassinated last week. And a lot of articles are coming up of like, who's to blame for this? Well, the whole society is to blame for this, of what it's been producing. Have you seen all the things that are coming out of public school teachers getting fired for all the junk they say in regards to Charlie Kirk, or even the professors and what's all happening on our college campuses? That's not an accident. That guy was a product of what our society is producing. And then corporate America is to blame for it as well. So this article in The Blaze, how corporate America helped fuel the hate that killed Charlie Kirk. The article goes on, years of platforming, promoting of woke cancers, of trans ideology, critical race theory, cultural Marxism, abortion, promoting LGBT propaganda in their storefronts and advertising, mandatory trainings on gender-affirming HR policy, and many others through America's largest corporations have done more damage than they realize. It's right. When you have Bud Light advertising Dylan Mulvaney, a transgender, right? When you have all Target promoting tuck-it clothes for little boys to pretend they're girls, they have contributed to this. They're all part of the collective guilt in this. And then the thing about this, we're watching our culture that can't mourn for sin anymore. They don't even call it that. Here's Jasmine Crockett, crazier than a bedbug. And look at what she says. Just because someone has committed a crime doesn't make them a criminal. What? That's completely different, she says. Being a criminal is more so about your mindset. I'm sorry. If you lie habitually, what does that make you? A liar. If you steal, what does that make you? A stealer. No, a thief, right? And so forth and so on. And I'm like, is she trying to gaslight the entire planet, the entire United States, saying someone's not a criminal if they commit a crime? I don't know what you call them then. But that's what I'm saying. Jasmine Crockett, just again, another example of our culture that doesn't mourn for sin. She didn't even define it. Here's another guy that doesn't mourn for sin. In fact, changed the whole narrative and said it was MAGA that shot Charlie Kirk, which he immediately got fired or released or whatever you want to call it from his late night show, which was tanking. He lost like 700 viewers or whatever in the last few months or whatever. These late night talk shows have been contributing to this. Jimmy Fallon and all these other goofy guys promoting radical leftist ideas. And I'm glad ABC or at least Sinclair made a complaint and saying, you got to get this guy off the air. Now, I'm still hearing talks that ABC might bring him back. It's like, oh my gosh, you guys don't even get it, do you? But look at what MRC's Newsbusters found out about this guy. 92% of Kimmel's jokes since January 2023 has been about conservatives. And since September 22, 97% of his political guests have been liberals. When you keep platforming the radical left, what do you think you're doing to your audience? You're brainwashing them. That's been the whole late night hosts of Stephen Colbert, all those crazy radical leftists. And then you got Ilhan Omar this last week going completely off the rails. This woman doesn't know what sin is. I can guarantee you that. She doesn't mourn over sin. She called Charlie Kirk reprehensible and a hateful man. She reposted a video that said Kirk was Dr. Frankenstein and his monster shot him through the neck. She said it on TV, by the way. He also didn't even believe I could be smart enough, she said. I could have thoughts I would equal to a white man. Now, why are you bringing race into it, Ilhan? Oh, that's right, because you always play the race card when you don't have the facts and evidence. That's the problem. And like this article says, the deeper problem is that Omar's worldview closely aligns with that of the Muslim Brotherhood, and I hope Trump designates the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. They need to be, and she's part of it, by the way. Here's a positive, Lila Rose. I don't know if you know her, but she's a huge advocate for pro-life, and she went to Yale. She got invited to Yale and to debate the lady in the red who believes in murdering children and sacrificing them to Moloch. So she goes to Yale and wins the debate. And, here's a gal like Lila Rose. She knows what time it is. She understands what fight we're in, the cultural battle, and she's there to defend the truth. She's an example, unlike Ilhan Omar and the rest of these, that mourn over sin like God said, like God does. You've got to imagine how Jesus feels about the abortion that's continuing to happen you've got to know he's weeping over that, right? Here's her at Yale, and she trounced this lady in red, this far left radical who wants to murder babies. Here's a snippet of Lila.
When choice of adults is made supreme, not of the children, life of children of the vulnerable become disposable. What about the child's choice? That has not been represented here yet tonight. And so let me ask the question here plainly. Should murder be legal? Should murder be legal? Of course not. Then why do we excuse abortion? Abortion is the direct and intentional killing of an innocent human being. It is not an accident. It is the direct and intentional killing of an innocent human being. That is the reality behind euphemisms like choice and healthcare. What does abortion actually do? Abortion procedures tear babies limb from limb in suction abortions. In the abortion pill abortion, it starves a child to death with drugs. In later term abortions, it pierces a needle into the beating heart or the brain of a living, developing child. These are not acts of healing. These are acts of killing.
God bless her. Good for her. Blessed are those who mourn, for that which God mourns. Now, the idea is they shall be comforted. That's the reward. Now, how does this come? Well, Isaiah 40 talks about the comfort that will come in the Messianic Kingdom. Comfort, yes, comfort my people, talking about Israel. Says your God, speak comfort to Jerusalem and cry out to her that her warfare is ended, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she has received the Lord's hand double for all her sins. And what Isaiah 40 is trying to say is, after this life, we go into the kingdom. The kingdom age is 1,000 years. And during that time, Jesus rules and reigns. And the good news about it, what it's saying as part of the reward is, we will not live in a world where people don't understand sin. They will all know it because Jesus will rule and reign. We will not have these obnoxious people who do not know how to classify crime. We will not have these obnoxious people who continue to call good people bad people. That won't exist. And what it's trying to tell you is there's coming a day where you won't have to experience it anymore. And your mourning will be over and you will be comforted. Furthermore, if we die today and we go to heaven where the New Jerusalem is, then we also will be comforted by that same idea. And it says, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There should be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There should be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. It's the same idea. Wherever God's abode is, and then obviously in the Messianic Kingdom, there is no more mourning anymore because you're comforted, because it doesn't exist in that realm. It doesn't exist. God doesn't allow it. And so that's the reward of this. Now, the reward in this is this. Your capacity to be sensitive to sin, as you increase your capacity, the more spiritually mature you get, your capacity to sin, as far as mourning for it, increases. So here's what naturally should happen. That the older you get spiritually, not age-wise, but spiritually, you will get to the point where you will hate sin just like God does. That the things you tolerated when you were younger, you won't tolerate anymore. Where you turned a blind eye, you just can't deal with it anymore because you're becoming sensitive to sin like God is. That's a good thing, because the more you increase your capacity to mourn, the more your capacity for comfort will be expanded in the kingdom and in eternity. How that works, I really don't know. I'm just telling you kind of the mechanics of it. The more you increase your capacity, the more you will be comforted in the next life. And when I say comforted, I am talking about not a one-time comfort, but a comfort reward that lasts for all eternity. So think in these terms. Some believers will be comforted more in heaven, in eternity, than other believers. We will all be comforted, but some will have a greater experience of that, and that greater experience is in proportion to how sensitive they become to sin here and now. That makes sense. I don't know all that means, but at least I can understand that part of the reward is to increase our ability to be comforted. Then he goes, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Meek does not mean weakness. It's taken from Psalm 37:11 that Messiah is quoting. But the meek shall inherit the earth, and they shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. Now, what is meekness? Let's get this understanding, because right now, we're all ticked off about what happened, and we're getting more enraged about watching the left take delight in the death of Charlie Kirk and take the delight in watching them destroy America. They take delight in destroying the West. They take delight in destroying the church. And it creates a lot of anger in all of us. Everybody I talk to has anger in them. I get it. And you should have a righteous anger for what they have done. But meekness is not weakness. It is strength that is surrendered to God. okay? It's yielded to God's authority and his timing. It's the idea that although you may be angry, you don't sin. That's the idea. That although you might be angry, you channel that anger properly to be motivated to do something positive, to push back the darkness, to push back the lies. That it creates a fire in you, not to retaliate, not to seek revenge, but to do the right things. And that's what we're starting to see with a lot of people that are waking up. By the way, it's not the pastors that are waking up, it's the grassroots Christians that are waking up. That's the ones that are getting ticked off and letting that channel into a positive thing. That's meekness. So the idea then is, I lay down my rights to seek revenge. That's the idea. I don't push my own agenda. I stay on God's agenda, and I don't use my freedoms to push my way around others. That's the idea of meekness. So the concept is, that's why I give you a picture of a horse with a bridle. That horse is a very powerful, it's just full of muscle, man. And the bridle, the bit in its mouth controls this powerful animal. And so the bit is the word of God that controls us. That's the idea. That powerful animal is controlled by a small bit. And that's what it's a picture of us. So what it comes down to is the believer then has the ability to rule their own spirit. They're not pushy, they're not proud, they're not chasing the spotlight, they're not promoting themselves, they're not grasping for position, they're not driven by selfish ambition, and they don't look to dominate and control others. They sit there waiting for the Lord to give them the green light. And to whatever those boundaries are, then they go into action, just like a horse. Just like you were running a horse or whatever around a track. He will go into action once he's kicked into gear, so to speak. And that's the idea. So if you think about this, in order to control your spirit, in order for me to control my spirit, there has to be a humility and it has to be a submission to the Lord's will. Okay? So we walk in patience, waiting for the Lord. And then the reward is, for they shall inherit the earth. So the idea is this: if you can rule your spirit and put it under the control of the Messiah, then you shall rule in the kingdom and for eternity. Not all believers will rule and reign. Only those who can control their spirit will rule and reign. Because if you can't control yourself, how could he put you in charge of anything else? So it's the ability to rule and reign, and to rule their own spirit. And that's where you get the idea of inherit the earth. Notice it's inherit the earth. Inheritance is different than entrance into the kingdom. It's an inheritance. And so only a few that do this can get this reward. He continues on. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Let's talk about hunger and thirst for righteousness. It's those who seek to live according to the absolute standards of God. It's those who don't play the game of postmodernism, well, you have your truth and then I have my truth, and we're just going to live. No. There is an absolute standard for truth. Charlie Kirk made this abundantly clear when he went to the college campuses, that there is absolute truth. You don't get to make up your own world. You don't get to make up your own reality and perception. There's an absolute standard. So those who are hungry and thirst for that is those who believe in an absolute standard and stick by it and don't get pushed around by the postmodernism. And again, this is connected to mourning, because in order to understand the absolute truths of God, you have to also mourn for that which he hates, the sin, right? So it's connected. Now, the idea is, he says you should be filled. Okay, what does that mean? Well, filled is the idea of eating something. So if you ate a great meal and, you went out for your birthday or anniversary or whatever, and you went out and had a great meal, a steak and lobster, and you ate the desserts and everything, and you come back home, you have this satisfaction. That's the idea the Greek is trying to get across. It's like eating a great meal. And you have this satiety that you're satisfied. Well, that's what's happening here. So it's a twofold blessing. It's a blessing for here and now and a blessing for eternity, your fill. So when you believe in absolute truth and you fight for that absolute truth, it gives you a satisfaction. It meets your hunger and it satisfies you. And really, well, it's not that the fact that I see the world getting better, it's getting worse. But if I'm looking at the absolute standard is God. And I focus in on him that he one day will bring in that absolute standard. But he is my focus. Not those who miss the standard, but him who makes the standard and is of the standard. And so the idea is I am satisfied that there is absolute truth and righteousness when I look to Jesus, when I look to God. I see it there. And that's what satisfies me because it's a prelude to what's coming. That's the idea. So God satisfies my longing for the right things. He satisfies my desire for righteousness and for things to be put straight in this world. So that's where I get fed off of. But then in the future, you will experience the satisfaction. You actually, when you're in the kingdom, you will experience this, and that's the feeling you will have. And so I don't know how to fully comprehend all of this, but again, it comes back to the more you thirst and hunger for an absolute truth and want the truth, the more it increases your capacity to be satisfied in the kingdom. Now, everyone will be satisfied, but those who get this will be satisfied at a greater extent. And again, that's the best I can do as far as understanding this reward. Now, when we take a look at the culture doesn't hunger and thirst for righteousness. They hunger and thirst for sin. New survey finds more than 50% of Americans support the right of assisted suicide. Yeah, so if you want to kill yourself, kill yourself. That's how they think about it. So the absolute idea of preserving life is not absolute. It's relative to them. That's the idea. Lutheran pastor tells congregants, I don't like these scriptures. I can't find anything redeeming in Paul's letter. That, I don't know is that a guy or a girl? I'm not sure. That person doesn't hunger and thirst for righteousness, right? It's obvious. 3 high school students stand up for Charlie Kirk calling to fire a teacher who celebrated his murder. And by the way, the guy was put on administrative leave. I gotta appreciate these kids in the high schools who are outing these teachers. And every one of these teachers or people that work should be outed that do this. Every one of them. You don't get to take government money, state money, and then put out there on your own social media that you delight in the death of Charlie Kirk. You don't get to do that as a public official, especially if you take tax money. So I'm glad these kids out them. You know what? Those kids, those 3 high school kids that did that, have a hunger and a desire for righteousness. Because that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be shining the light on the darkness and exposing these creeps. Again, we're not going to get rid of the mindset. And so we hope that some people convert, but a lot of them are not going to convert to Christianity. But what do? You have to expose the evil. You have to push the evil back into the darkness. Good. I hope this continues to happen because even here locally, what I am hearing from these screwball teachers is the same thing. They have a conniption fit in the fact that Turning Point USA had a prayer time at Liberty, and then all of a sudden it's a problem. It's not a problem. The kids organized it, and they had a time of prayer, and that was violent to some of the other kids. And that was some of the kids came and said, I was afraid. You're afraid of people gathering around and praying? What are you, insane? Yes. And the Kern High School District continues to allow the insanity to rule their whole public school system. We got a problem on our hands, guys. I hope every teacher, every administrator in the Kern High School District who delights in the death of Charlie Kirk is immediately fired and terminated. They need to be. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. What religion is this, guys?
We're Episcopal priests. Of course we get dressed up on Sundays. I'm an Episcopal priest. Of course we'll do your gay wedding.
I'm an Episcopal priest. Of course women can be priests.
I'm an Episcopal priest. Of course I offer free walk-in therapy all day.
We're Episcopal priests. Of course we know your pronouns. We're Episcopal priests. Of course we're super serious. We're Episcopal priests. Of course we wear our collars every day.
I'm an Episcopal priest. Of course we set up fun children's areas in worship. I'm an Episcopal priest. Of course we love incense.
Someone needs to tell that guy it's 1969 called. They want their hippie back. Someone needs to tell them that. But what's the thing? Do you think that person or those two people hunger and thirst for righteousness? No, not at all. That's the problem. They don't thirst. Here's a guy who did hunger and thirst for righteousness. Listen to this.
Boys are boys from the beginning. If you were born a boy, you stay a boy. Girls are girls right from the start. If you were born a girl, you stay a girl and grow up to be a lady. Only girls can be the mommies. Only boys can be the daddies. Yes, sir.
Right? God bless Mr. Rogers, man. That show would be taken off today, right? If he said something like that. God bless Mr. Rogers. He hungered and thirsted for righteousness. We know he was a Christian, right? God bless him. But here's the idea. Again, it's all about capacity. A lot of this is what I'm trying to explain, so it's hard sometimes to conceptualize it. So I came up with the idea of cups. There's different sized cups. The more you hunger and thirst for righteousness right now, the more your capacity to be satisfied and filled in the future comes. So it's like, do you want a small cup of satisfaction? Do you want a large cup of satisfaction? That's the idea of this reward. Some will have a smaller cup. Some will have a large cup. Some will have a medium cup, so to speak. But that's what the reward is about. And here's the deal. I want to experience it maximized. I want the full experience of heaven. I want the full experience of the kingdom. I don't want to be cut short. Okay, then, we'll hunger and thirst for righteousness. Now let's go to horizontally, how they relate. Those are all related to God. Now these are related to human factors. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Now a lot of people, they take this passage and they don't understand what mercy means. Mercy is not grace. Mercy is not giving something and giving favor to somebody and they don't deserve the favor. Mercy is the withholding of judgment. Mercy is withholding the penalty that is rightly deserved and then extending kindness and relief and forgiveness to the guilty to relieve that condition. So it is not unmerited favor. So we have to get our definitions properly to understand what Jesus is talking about. Now, mercy in this passage is interpersonal, okay? The Sermon on the Mount cannot be applied to how nations deal with other nations. So you cannot apply the application of this because it's interpersonal. So people will try to say, well, you need to have mercy on Russia. No. You need to have mercy on Iran. No. You need to have mercy on Rocket Man in North Korea. No. That's not how you apply this passage. It's interpersonal application. It's one-on-one. You don't apply the Sermon on the Mount on a nationalistic level. So so in our interpersonal relationships, people are going to offend you. Your family is going to offend you. Your friends are going to offend you, okay? And so at minimum, you don't retaliate. That's the idea. That's where mercy is. Even though you could, you don't retaliate, and you offer forgiveness vertically to the person. There's vertical forgiveness and there's horizontal forgiveness. Okay, so when you vertically forgive someone over to God, it's Mark 11:25, I am giving the debt that they owe me over to God. And so by me not retaliating and doing bad things and being maybe passive aggressive, I'm giving the person mercy. okay? It doesn't mean I'm giving horizontal forgiveness. Please understand that. Horizontal forgiveness only occurs if the person repents, and then I can extend horizontal forgiveness. Now, we've talked about that before, but that's what goes into mercy. But here's the thing. When you give mercy, it doesn't annul the justice that needs to happen. It doesn't ignore the justice that needs to happen. So when I'm giving over the offense to God, what I'm doing is giving the justice over to him that he will mete it out in his time and purpose and how he wants to mete it out. That's what I'm doing. And so that's how you extend mercy, is let God deal with the justice. It is not ignoring justice. Please understand that. I do not want anyone to think that we give mercy to criminals and we don't lock them up. Okay, that's insane, right? So when you see mercy as the quintessential example, you see it on the cross. Mercy is extended to us because he's taking our wrath, right? Yes, that's the idea. So justice is being done, no doubt about that, but it's being done to a substitute, the Messiah. And so mercy then can get extended to us. But again, justice is being served. So it's all harmonized when you look at the cross. Now, as far as we're concerned, the reward of giving mercy is that you will get mercy. James 2:13 is, for judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. What is James talking about? Well, he's talking about, look, when you extend mercy to somebody, like not taking revenge, not retaliating, not in giving that over to God, then mercy will be given to you by other people. So it comes back. It comes back. It's like a boomerang. It comes back to you even here and now, okay? So the idea is merciful people often reap mercy in return. So compassion tends to cycle back is the idea. For the future, though, here's where we want the mercy. We want mercy in front of Christ, okay? This is where the rubber meets the road. We're going to meet with Christ and go, and it's called the Bema seat, and he's going to evaluate our lives, our Christian lives. Again, the Bema seat is not for sending someone to hell or not. If you're saved, the Bema seat is a reward judgment, okay? So how much Christ can reward you. But let me ask you this. Do you want Christ to be exacting when you're standing in front of him, or do you want some mercy when he looks at your life? I can tell you right now, I want some mercy, and I want a heavy dose of it because I have screwed up so many times. So this is where the rubber meets the road. Yeah, no doubt, when you give mercy, you get it back boomeranged from other people. But man, what we have looking forward to is, if I have given mercy out in this life, I will be extended mercy when Christ evaluates my life. And I want that. I want that. That's where the reward is. When he looks at my life and evaluates it, I want him to take that in consideration. And how he's going to do it, he's going to say, well, Brandon, you weren't merciful here, and you weren't merciful. You were very exacting. You were right. You were totally right, but you showed no mercy. So I am not going to show you mercy. I will be very exacting on you. Oh, I don't want that. Don't want that. That's where the reward is. Blessed are those who are pure in heart, for they shall see God. What does pure in heart mean? It means the right motives, the godly attitudes, the integrity that guides our actions towards God and others. That's what it means. Here's a person that has no integrity, has wrong motives, has all the wrong desires. So Candace Owens is an opportunist, and she takes advantage of the death of Charlie Kirk to say things now that Charlie can't defend himself on, and makes up a false narrative. And she's being called out on it. But this is what I'm talking about as far as pure motives. God wants us to have pure motives in what we do. Not agendas, not building our own kingdom or getting our name out there. So the anti-Semite, and she's already an anti-Semite already, rewrites Kirk's legacy to better serve her own nefarious end. She said that the Jewish state of Israel is somehow involved in Kirk's assassination. And she still won't let that go. I dealt with that on Wednesday. It's a total lie. She said Kirk had soured on Israel. No, he didn't, by the way. He hated Bibi Netanyahu and was getting close to publicly adopting a hostile stance. No, he wasn't. Then she said that Bill Ackman, the billionaire hedge funder and proud Zionist, staged an intervention with Kirk during a retreat last month in the Hamptons where Ackman pressured Kirk to get in line on the Israel issue. That didn't happen. It's a lie. This is Josh Hammer of PJ Media. I spoke with Kirk less than 24 hours before his untimely death. The night before, the right-wing rabbi friend and I held a Zoom call with Kirk and a few others. During this call, Kirk, an unapologetic Christian Zionist, that's what we are, who was greatly distressed by the rising anti-Semitism in some pockets of the right, asked us a series of Israel-related questions that he was anticipating receiving on his upcoming campus tour. So on his campus tour, he was anticipating the anti-Semitism in the college and was wanting to have talking points of what do I say about this. We answered those questions, provided a message of advice for how to best communicate, and went over his students. As far as the Hamptons retreat last month, I was there. Kirk had personally texted me to invite me, and I inscribed book copies for 2 special retreat attendees, Kirk and Ackman. Put simply, there was no intervention. Not from Ackman, not from Babylon B. Seth Zillan, not from anyone else. He only doubled down on his opposition to Islam and suggested that Israel is a natural ally in the fight against jihadism. It's the exact opposite of what Candace said. He was pro-Israel and he's concerned about the Muslims. That's what we all have said. That's been consistent with Charlie. But why would Candace Owens then take that and twist it? Because of impure motives, impure desires. She wants something. Maybe it's name recognition, who knows? But that's an example of what Christ is coming after. We can't be like Candace Owens, obviously. And the reward is they shall see God. Now again, that's kind of a hard reward to understand. What do you mean? Because in heaven, in the kingdom, we all see God. Well, presently refers to seeing God means having fellowship with him, is the idea. So James 4:8 says, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. So the closer you get to God, you see him. Not physically, but metaphorically. That's the idea. The reward here is intimacy, that you will draw closeness and have spiritual clarity when you're there. Now, in the future reward is, yes, we will all see God in his essence. But here's the thing. Some will be rewarded and see God in the fullest sense and the fullest of the revelation of him when we see him face to face. How that happens, I'm not quite sure, and I don't understand quite a lot of it. But that's what the passage is trying to say. And so let me conceptualize it. Those who increase their capacity will see God in a greater way. Will see him in a fuller revelation. That's the idea. So again, go back to the cups. Some have a large, some have a medium, some have a small. We will all see God, but other people will see him differently than what we all see, than other people. And so it's a promise to all believers. So it's about a capacity or degree in enjoying what they call the beatific vision. That's been the hope of all of us, is to see God. Now, what does that mean? Now, again, it's hard to conceptualize this, but here's the thing. If you saw God in his essence and his being and all of his glory, you would not want to leave ever that presence. You would just be standing in his glory, worshiping, and never want to leave. That's the idea of the beatific vision, okay? And so it's everything we've ever wanted. It's everything we ever need. It's just to be in his presence one-on-one. Some people, it's saying, who do this will increase their capacity to enjoy that, if that makes sense. It's a hard one, but that's what the idea is. It's degree and capacity. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. This definitely is misinterpreted by a lot of people. What does that mean, peacemakers? Well, look what Luke 12:51 says. Do not suppose I have come to give peace on earth. I tell you, not at all, but rather division. From now, from now on, 5 in one house will be divided, 3 against 2, 2 against 3. Father will be divided against son, and son against mother, and father and daughter against mother. Mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. That doesn't sound like peacemaking. That sounds like division. Yeah, now you're understanding it. This is not those who want to have peace as far as between nations. That's not going to happen until Jesus comes back. What this is talking about is interpersonal peace, and the context is among believers. Peace among believers that brings unity. This is what the priest, high priestly prayer that he prayed in John 17. I want them to be unified in the truth, Father. So it's not peace at all costs. It's peace based on truth. You and I cannot have peace unless someone's on the same ticket of truth. You can't. And Christ just said it. I am not come to bring peace but division. That goes for society, that goes for your community, that goes for your family. And think about this. The left is calling on, we need to be unified. I can't unify with someone that thinks that a man can have a baby. Do not ask me to unify with someone that wants to kill babies. Do not ask me to unify that someone that wants to be a transgender. I can't unify because it's not based on truth. It's based on a lie. So peacemaking is not having peace and accepting the lie of the other person. Think about this on your own family level. How in the world can you have a relationship with someone in your family that is a habitual liar? How can you? You can't. And so that because you're on the side of truth and they're on the side of lie, there's nothing you can unify with. You can't. So drop this idea that I have to have peace at all costs. That's not what Jesus is talking about. You can't. You can have peace if people are on the same ticket, but you can't if they're not. Therefore, let us pursue the things which make for peace and the things which one may edify one another. So we pursue peace. We want peace. We want to unify with other people, but we can't do it unless. So the idea is I'm willing to make peace if you're willing to repent. I'm willing to make peace if you stop doing the crazy things you're doing. I'm willing to have that. I have the attitude. That's what Christ is saying. But until you get your head screwed on straight, we're not going to have peace. You, because you're not on the ticket of truth, have decided to divide yourself from us. Not us. You have. That's the idea. And look at the reward, for they shall be called sons of God. Now this is the reward, the designation of being called the son of God. And you might say, well, I thought we all were. No. We are all called the children of God. But notice we're called children. We're not called sons. Sonship is given to those believers who do this, who are peacemakers, that are wanting to have peace and unified by the truth. So you might be called a child of God, but not everybody's called a son. Sonship is a reward. It means the person has grown up spiritually. So it points to a higher recognition for the individual, like in the ancient world. That's where it's coming from. And so what the idea is, being called a son in the Hebrew context, is the idea of representing the father, representing the family. That's what the idea. It's a family likeness is what it's trying to say. So children of God do not represent. It's the sons of God that represent. That's the idea. So that's the reward dimension. So this is similar to the other titles in Scripture that are given to other believers, with those called friends of Christ or friends of God, like Abraham was. That's a designation that somebody gets from the ultimate sacrifice, right? A co-heir with Christ. Not all believers are co-heir with Christ. Only those who are rewarded by suffering well get to rule and reign with the Messiah. So sons of God, friend of God, co-heir with Christ, these are all terms of reward and position and authority in the kingdom. Let's go to the last one. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteous sake. What does it say? For righteousness' sake, for the holy standard of God. That's what it means. That somebody, a believer, is holding to the standards of God. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That's a repeat of another promise. Possession. Right? Blessed are they when they revile and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So you're in good company if they persecute you. Your great is your reward in heaven. I can tell you what this reward is. It's the crown of life. Those who suffer well, suffer through persecution, and are martyred are given the crown of life. I believe Charlie is going to be given the crown of life because he was martyred for what he did. But I want you to think about this in terms of martyrdom and Christian persecution. More than 300 million Christians suffer high levels of persecution and discrimination for the faith daily, okay? This is the latest thing that happened in September this month. 100 plus Christians were killed in 2 days. They were attending a funeral of whether they're members of the church, and the Islamic State came and killed 70 Christians with guns and machetes, kidnapped 100 people, and 16 houses were burned to the ground. Probably never heard that on CNN, right? No, of course you didn't. You didn't hear that from our media. They're not going to talk about it. But Christians are being slaughtered all over the world in record numbers. Living according to the righteous standards of God and speaking the truth will bring persecution. Look at 2 Timothy. All who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. So if you're not being persecuted, you must not be living correctly. If you are being persecuted, it's probably because how you're living. That's the idea. Now, I want to show you the demonic activity that's happening in our college campuses. The persecution that's happening. It's real, and you need to see it. You need to understand what's going on in our college campus because this is what's fomenting. Watch this guy mock Charlie Kirk.
Oh my God. Everybody has not because of my name is
Oh, buddy. You're gonna get expelled, dude.
He did get expelled. Good. Amen. That was at Texas State University. He did get expelled, and he was mocking Charlie. But that's going on all through our campuses, right, by the way. This girl got arrested for spitting on TPUSA members. And so it's happening. These kids that are being radicalized in our colleges, man. This is our college campuses right here. These are at turning point rallies, by the way, at the college campuses, right? Hey, fascist catch. I mean, mocking the bullet, right? USA is occupied by Israel. Free Palestine. Again, this is at Charlie Kirk's TPSA memorials and stuff. This is in Texas. They have a whiteboard, and people just filled the whole whiteboard with just crazy demonic things about Charlie Kirk on their whiteboard. Here's the Blaze picked up a story that was happening. A memorial for Charlie Kirk was happening at Washington Square, and this is how it went.
I don't want your salvations.
Why?
I want you to die. We're not going to give you a second chance, even when you beg for it on your knees, begging and pleading.
Totally demonic. Guys, you understand that's what's happening to the college campuses. They're out of control. And then Project Oversight is unleashing a new campaign to urge the FBI to declare transgender ideology, motivated violence, and extreme as a domestic terrorism. They need to. It's now called Trantifa. Yeah. By the way, the people behind the shooter and the FBI is investigating, but at least 20 of them are part of this told transgender queer resistance, agitate, educate, lecture, armed queers is the idea. And I hope Kash Patel gets all of them. I hope because they all knew about it. They all were talking about it, and they didn't say anything because they wanted Charlie Kirk dead. This is what we're dealing with. Then we have people in our own camp that can't get their heads screwed on straight and don't know which way is up and down. You got this Southern Baptist pastor says the danger of that is when you fight spiritual battles in a carnal way, the world responds with that same carnality. Hey, pastor, I don't know what you're talking about. What carnality did Charlie have? Everything was filmed. Everything was in decent order. Everything was a conversation. What are you talking about? Or are you just making stuff up, pastor? But just because someone fought for Jesus doesn't mean they fought like Jesus. Well, pastor, tell me this. He was filmed in every one of his talks. At what film are you referring to? Or are you just making this up? See, that's the problem. That's the problem in the church. This woke pastor, Jacob Buchholz of Claremont United Church of Christ, ought to tell you something. He regularly attacked the trans community. No, he did. He pointed it out that it's wrong, calling them an abomination. Show me what video he called them an abomination, dude, because I can't find one. A throbbing middle finger to God. I don't ever remember Charlie saying that. If he did, the whole news left would have picked that one up. You're a liar, pastor. And said that doctors who perform gender-affirming care should face war crime criminals. I agree, and if he did say that, I would agree. Every doctor that mutilates a child ought to be put in jail and locked up for the rest of their life. I would agree with that. Pastor, you have a problem with that? He regularly attacked feminism, and it should be, saying that women should adopt traditional gender roles. I agree too. All of these teachings cause infallible harm and violence. There's the idea of harm and violence. He brought it on himself. That's what we got going on in the church. The reward for dealing with persecution. Even from inside, you're dealing with persecution. Even from the church itself, you're dealing with persecution. What's the reward? Exaltation and wealth in the kingdom. That's the idea of possession. It's not entrance, it's possession. And it's the crown of life is what the person will be given. Charlie's going to be given the crown of life. And guys, if you suffer through the persecution, if you put yourself out there, you start telling the truth, you're going to get pushback. And that's okay because you'll get the crown of life too. The reward is better than the persecution, guaranteed. Here's a final tribute, and this is what I appreciate about this. The Sinclair news organization or whatever, I can't remember what they're affiliated with, but they put pressure on ABC to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. And thank God they did. So instead, they played this on YouTube in place of Jimmy Kimmel, and they did, and God bless them. I got to give them the hats off to them for playing this in honor of Charlie Kirk.
Everything completely goes away. How do you want to be remembered?
I mean, if I die?
Everything just goes away. How would you, if you could be associated with one thing, how would you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing. The most important thing is my faith in my life.
An American patriot, fearless in his faith.
Well, the first thing is winning souls for Jesus Christ. The most important thing.
Lord, use me as an instrument for your will.
The morality that built the West is the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments is the best rules of life for any society to flourish and to be able to succeed.
A political powerhouse fueling the youth of America.
This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate.
And I'll never forget it, Charlie, that I would not be here were it not for you. He was a good guy.
A young life viciously stolen in seconds while the world watched.
This is the police chief's nightmare. You try to get your bases covered, and unfortunately today we didn't. And because of that, we had this tragic incident.
All the young people across this nation, what does it mean to them now that their leader was killed?
The nation mourns, the nation is shaken by that, and we're working through that emotion.
Our nation now steadfast in hope that his pure message of faith.
Charlie Kirk just had a wonderful way of bringing the best out of conservatives.
Family.
Erica is, by God's grace, just strong as can be. She's a lioness.
Freedom and love of country.
Them taking him out only makes us stronger. So we're not going anywhere. We're all Charlie Kirk now.
Carries on.
If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have no idea what you just have unleashed across this entire country.
I hope it has unleashed you to stand for truth, to give it out, regardless of the pushback you get. Be like Charlie. What did he want to be known for? His courage for defending the faith, his courage for defending Jesus Christ. I hope that's you and I. Let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for what we can learn from the Beatitudes.